Hey everyone, this is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well wherever you are, and I appreciate you for tuning into this broadcast. So, a few days ago, one of my viewers suggested that I watch the conversation with Jeezy and Nia Long, so shout out to them for putting me on notice because I've been so busy studying and working that I haven't had much time to get into current events. Right off the bat, I really enjoyed this interview. It was very well done. It was mature, it was coherent, it was authentic, and it was responsible. Jeezy and Nia did an excellent job, and kudos to them for using their celebrity and their massive platform to promote healing instead of divisiveness, bitterness, and frustration. So there were at least 20 things that I really liked about this interview. Number one, both Nia and Jeezy have done the work. Okay, they have done some sort of therapy or counseling to help resolve some of their personal issues. Jeezy and Nia Long were discussing their childhood experiences, their trauma, and the language that they were using during the discussion indicated that they have both received some sort of therapy in the past. I heard some human design knowledge. I heard some transcendental meditation, some psychotherapy. Like Nia and Jeezy were speaking from a peaceful and informed space. They respected each other's time because they were both receptive to the process. They came with positive energy, good vibes, and a little bit of flirtatious energy, which was interesting to look at and it made it more enjoyable to watch. It was a great conversation, even though Jeezy was capping when he said he didn't understand men who needed to be treated like a king and who cheated. Okay, whatever. So number two, they both took accountability for their actions. Both Nia and Jeezy took accountability for their actions, their mistakes. They acknowledged that they have been hurt and betrayed in the past, and they carried that trauma with them, but they also reflected on their own behavior and how they were responsible for making better decisions going forward. Like forgiveness, like respecting boundaries, like releasing people who are not in alignment with your energy, instead of blaming others for making the same mistakes. They talked about what they did to heal themselves from their experiences so that they don't have to hurt others the same way. Okay? Number three, having integrity. Nia discussed the lack of integrity in Black relationships and the Black community in general. I mean, just because you can cheat doesn't mean you should do it. Just because you can get away with stealing or doing something wrong doesn't mean that you should do it. You know, the Black community at large, not all Black people, but at large, the culture has become very selfish, very individualistic, and focused on material gain to the point where we will compromise our morals and our values for a temporary high. The lack of integrity in our relationships, whether it's personal or professional, is the main reason why there's a lack of trust between Black women and men. A man is a simp for treating a Black woman with respect, and many women have no problem poaching boyfriends and husbands because society tells them that if they don't have a man, they're worthless. Okay? Number four, success versus significance. Jeezy brought up an excellent point about success versus significance. And this is something that I've had to contend with as I've built this platform. You know, am I more focused on popularity and views than having a positive impact on my community and the collective? Do I want my platform to be used as a source of information that other people can weaponize against others? And this is one of the main reasons why, you know, I pulled away from the Love Marriage Huntsville commentary, because I didn't want to become popular for discussing negative topics all the time, even though I'm being honest about my feelings and I'm being genuine and I'm trying to help people with their relationships or their perceptions about themselves and the culture. You know, I felt like some of the information that I was sharing was being repurposed and repackaged in ways that I did not intend. And so, yes, I'm going to lose subscribers. I'm going to lose followers. I'm going to lose a lot of support, but I would rather build this platform on something that is sustainable for me. It is not sustainable for me to use my platform to constantly bash people. When I offer my critique, I'm not doing it out of maliciousness. I'm doing it because I'm really trying to help. And, you know, if people keep making the same mistakes and I keep having the same critique, my channel is going to turn into a people bashing platform. And I don't want to do that. I'm trying to help. And even if I make mistakes and, you know, I don't always get things right and I don't know everything, I know I don't know everything, my intentions are very sincere. So I would rather lose the channel then allow it to be used as a weapon in a way that I did not intend. So Jeezy talked about the same thing. He said that, initially he rapped about garbage culture, women and drugs and, the same old nonsense that rappers talked about in the 90s and 2000s. And at some point, he was brave enough to shift his message to something more positive at the risk of losing his loyal fan base. And I understand where he's coming from. Like I just said, I know I'm going to lose subscribers as I pivot to other topics on this channel. I don't want to talk about the same old toxic stuff anymore, and I don't want to use my channel to throw daggers at people. And even though the daggers that I throw are accurate, somebody else can take that same dagger and turn it into something else, and I don't want that to happen. So yeah, I understand what he was saying with that, and I respect him for trying to make better decisions and to be more intentional with the message that he's putting out in the universe. As I've said from the very beginning, I do not want subscribers that will only follow me if I say negative things about the people that they don't like, whether I believe it or not. They don't really care about that part. They just want me to say what they want to hear. And no, I'm not going to do that because that's not how I genuinely feel at the moment. So my channel will not grow because of that. And I'm okay with that. I made peace with that a long time ago. All right, number 5. What I liked about this interview, both Nia and Jeezy were listening to each other instead of hearing each other. Okay. Watching this conversation between them was like watching a ping pong match. They listened to what was said and they responded to what was said, not what they heard based on how they felt about the person or the conversation itself. A lot of us have a problem with filtering information through our emotions. So instead of listening to what is being said, we focus on how we feel about the person. So if you like somebody like Barack Obama or some sort of other celebrity or public figure, they can do no wrong. We will follow them off of a cliff no matter how evil they are. If we don't like somebody, we don't listen to anything that the person has to say, regardless of whether or not they're being honest, they have helpful, insightful information, or they're trying to help us out, right? They have their best interests. If I don't like you, no matter what you say and do, I don't want to hear it. So we cannot grow as a people with that type of mentality. We can't. That's why the relationship dynamics between Black men and women are so toxic, because nobody's listening to each other. We are listening to the feelings that we have for the person versus what's actually being said. Okay. And the reason why Jeezy and Nia's conversation was so constructive is because they weren't allowing their feelings to affect their ability to hear what was actually said and not what their feelings about the person told them that they were hearing. You cannot have productive conversations if you can't listen and be honest. Number 6, vulnerability and intimacy. Another thing I liked about this conversation was the fact that both Jeezy and Nia were vulnerable with each other. You can sense the mutual respect between them, which made them open to the process of having a genuine conversation where they could share their experiences and feelings without fear of judgment or ridicule. They gave each other a safe space to connect because, again, they were operating from a space of authenticity, healing, and respect, all of which are missing from most Black relationships, whether it's professional, familial, our friendships, or even our intimate partners. We do not know how to be vulnerable with each other, so now we don't have any intimacy with each other, okay? Because Jeezy and Nia were vulnerable with each other, they were able to be intimate. Not sexually, but emotionally and mentally. You cannot have a real relationship with someone if you do not trust them and you can't be vulnerable with them, which means you can't have intimacy with them. Okay, number 7, forgiveness. People hurt you out of fear. Jeezy said that he learned to forgive when he realized that people hurt you out of fear, not just pure maliciousness and evil intent. He talked about how many people betrayed him, how often his life was in danger. He said that many people betrayed him after he helped them. And he said that he realized that it was about them and not him. Nia agreed and said that the forgiveness is not about the other person. It is for you to liberate yourself from the energetic connection that is maintained through the negative emotions, the bitterness, the regret, and the anger. I discussed this a few days ago in my community section where I shared a message about the importance of releasing fear, anger, regret, bitterness, and other negative emotions before we transition out of our bodies, before we die, right? Because these negative feelings create karmic energetic attachments that follow you into different lifetimes. And then you're born into families and situations that force you to resolve that issue. And this is why the Black community is getting worse, because we are carrying multiple lifetimes of energetic baggage and compounded baggage on our souls. So whatever we don't heal in this lifetime, we're going to have to face in the next. And we have to use love and wisdom to elevate our vibration, which will be difficult to do because there are entities and principalities in high places that do not want this to happen. There are some spirits who will make it hard for you to elevate because they feed off of your negative energy. And that is why when you try to raise your vibration and do better, the toxic ex shows up, the abusive parent shows up, the abusive ex-best friend shows up, and they try to reconnect with you to make sure that you stay mired in the BS and the drama. So you have to make sure you stay the course and do not allow other people's negativity, their toxicity, and their demons to lower your vibration. Which brings me to the 8th thing that I liked about this interview: sending love vibrations. Nia said that she visualizes herself sending love energy to the people who hurt her to release herself from all the negative feelings associated with that experience. And I do the same thing. In fact, I just finished doing that a few days ago during the full moon eclipse. There is a new moon in Scorpio on the 13th of this month. This is another good day to send love and healing energy to the people who you are no longer in contact with, the people who you're still angry with, the people that you despise or hate. If you hate them, they will continue to be a part of your life experience in this lifetime and the next. Your feelings for them are forming an attachment that you do not want to maintain. Release the past with love and light, not bitterness and regret. Learn the lessons instead of internalizing the failure and the mistakes. And Nia Long and Jeezy both talked about not wanting to fail in their relationships, and it was hard for them to let go because of that. Number 9, introspection. If you listen to the conversation between these two very carefully, you will notice that Nia and Jeezy have been introspective. They have reflected on their own mental and emotional processes so that they can make better decisions in the future. They were hurt so badly that they wanted to do everything in their power to have a life of peace and happiness. And they weren't going to wait for someone to give them permission to heal. A lot of us want to blame other people for the decisions that we've made in relationships, in family dynamics, in our career, etc. Yes, it is wrong for someone to mistreat you, and it's not your fault that your ex is a cheater, or your father's a narcissist, or your coworker's a jerk. However, you must control the way you engage with them. It is your responsibility to do this. You must have boundaries. You must respect yourself enough to not allow someone to repeatedly disrespect you, because after a certain point, it becomes your fault. If you keep dealing with the same people and the same toxicity, do not feel bad for creating strong boundaries for yourself. But in order to do that, you have to take responsibility for your own actions. And you have to say, you know what? In order for me to do better in the future, I have to take accountability for my mistakes. I cannot keep engaging in the same behavior and then blaming someone else for the outcome. I'm going to reflect on my shortcomings to make sure that I am the best version of myself that I can be for myself. Because if you're not good for you or good to you, you really can't be good for or to anyone else. And Jeezy talked about trying to be the best version of himself. And again, this requires some self-work and introspection. Okay? Number 10. Another thing I loved about this conversation is the mutual respect that Jeezy and Nia had for each other. They looked fully engaged and fully locked into the conversation. They were not dismissive or defensive or distracted. They were talking to each other and not at each other, because this was a conversation between two successful people who became successful because of their talent, not because of plastic surgery, clout chasing, and backstabbing other people. And this is why they were comfortable with each other, and they could be vulnerable and have intimacy. Their success was not predicated on superficial things. Their success was predicated on hard work and actual talent, right? And so Jeezy and Nia were very comfortable with each other. They didn't have to brag or boast about how much money they had, how successful they were, how attractive they were, because they were so high value that they deserved a high value man or a woman. They didn't have to do all that. They didn't have anything to prove. Unlike a lot of these so-called influencers and these so-called famous for no reason celebrities on social media, both Nia and Jeezy were high value. And this was a high value conversation. Not me talking down on you because I got more money than you or you're not that attractive. They didn't care about that part. All they cared about was making a genuine connection and having a genuine, authentic conversation. They didn't walk into the room with their celebrity or their money or their fame or their popularity or whatever. They walked in as two human beings, a man and a woman, having a conversation. It wasn't about the bag. It wasn't about how high value you were. It was about them as people, as human beings. And we've lost sight of that because of the hyper-capitalistic culture that we've adopted, which I discussed on this channel a few weeks ago. Okay, number 11, sensitivity. I love the fact that both Nia and Jeezy showed sensitivity and compassion towards each other. Nia even teared up a little bit when she talked about how she was tired of having to be strong all the time. And Jeezy said that black men needed their sisters just like we need them to step up and protect us from the wolves, the vipers, and the roaches who try to take advantage of us when we're at our most vulnerable. Nia said that she appreciated Jeezy talking about his deepest feelings, but still appearing masculine, which is a balance that most women prefer. Women do not feel safe with men who are too emotional, which should not be confused with sensitivity. Emotional men are usually irrational, unhinged, or abusive in some way, just like Keke Palmer's baby daddy. Okay? Sensitive men, on the other hand, are in touch with their emotions, but they channel those feelings into constructive ways. They don't become consumed by them like a petulant child who wants to break everything because he doesn't get his way. Okay? Number 12, honoring yourself. Jeezy briefly touched on his relationship with his estranged wife, Jeannie Mai. He said that at some point he had to put his emotional and mental needs first because that's a part of his self-care process. And it may sound selfish to some people, and this should have been considered before he got married and had a baby. But I think he realized that his healing journey was going to be compromised by his marriage. Not because Jeannie is a bad person per se, but because his past traumas make him very sensitive to certain situations that may be triggered by the dynamic between him and his wife. I don't know if that's the main reason for the divorce, but this is his story and he has the right to tell his story. Which brings me to point number 13. Unity. Nia and Jeezy spoke about unity between black men and women. And Jeezy and Nia are both Generation X, so they have fonder memories of black culture, which was still relatively strong and collectivist during the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. We didn't jump off the capitalistic cliff until the mid to late 90s with the flexing and the flossing and the stunting and murdering, drugging, and whoring culture that was promoted in rap music in Hollywood, okay? Jeezy and Nia said we needed to have unity between black men and women, not contentiousness, not competitiveness. But in order to have unity, both sides have to be equally invested in a shared outcome. And as I've stated before on this channel, black men and black women have different ideas about what success looks and feels like. Right? Especially here in America. Some black people want social integration and access to white people. And other black people want economic integration and access to white power. So instead of building and maintaining our own, we want to brag about how well we've integrated and assimilated into this toxic society. So we weaponize our success against each other. And we also weaponize our sexual access to white or non-black people as if that means that we have more value because of it. And black celebrities promote this more than most people, which is why I do not like most of them. I don't hate all celebrities. I don't hate celebrity in of itself, but black celebrity culture has not really been helpful to the black community in the past 60 years. And that is by design. Anyway, number 14. Jeezy discussed the importance of nurturing his inner child because his mother was too damaged to do it. His mother was too damaged to nurture him and to love him in a compassionate, empathetic, and nurturing way, safe and affirming way. And based on that information, I knew that Jeezy had an afflicted moon in his natal chart. And lo and behold, when I looked up his natal chart, I saw that he has moon opposite Pluto. His mother was tormented by her own trauma and her own secrets, so her parenting style was based on this trauma. It was based on fear, abuse, powerlessness, and rejection. A lot of black women, okay, and I said this more than once, I'm not saying this just today, a lot of us have been ravaged to the point where we cannot be good mothers. We cannot be good daughters. We cannot be good friends. We can't be good wives. We can't be good to anybody because the anger and the bitterness that we have acquired throughout our lives, it consumes us. This is not all Black women. I didn't say all Black women. I'm not saying all Black women. Okay? But many of us have been damaged. And if we don't acknowledge that, then we're not appreciating the difficulties that we have experienced. We're not appreciating how much we've survived. If we say, oh no, there's nothing wrong with me, it's all good with me. No, that means that you're not acknowledging what has been done to you. You're not respecting what's happened to you. And so why should somebody else respect your pain or acknowledge your pain if you don't do it yourself? A lot of us are damaged, period. Now, that doesn't mean that we're worthless and irredeemable. This means that we have a lot of work to do. I remember watching an episode of Iyanla Fix My Life a few years ago. And there was a woman who falsely accused the father of her children of molesting them. Her daughters, she had 3 daughters, and she accused their father of molesting them, which wasn't true. And after she finally admitted that she lied on him for decades, she didn't lie on him for a couple years, she lied on him for decades. Okay? She said some nasty things about him that were not true. She stated that she never wanted children, so she didn't even know how to love her own children properly. She was also a victim of molestation and neglect and abuse as a child. And back in the day, there were many Black women who were abused and neglected as children. And they felt obligated to have babies because of the social cultural pressures in marriage. Like Kirk Franklin's mother, the same thing, right? Just because you're a Black woman or a woman for that matter, it doesn't mean that you're automatically a good mother, especially in a patriarchal culture that has spent centuries killing, sexually assaulting, and enslaving the minds, bodies, and the souls of women. Now, many of us hate ourselves and the children we produce because we need healing. But instead of healing properly, we seek validation from the very men who usually repeat the same cycle of abuse and neglect because they have been acculturated into the patriarchy system as well. Okay? So we are adding fuel to the fire by not allowing ourselves to heal before we reproduce and have children. Now, sometimes a child can heal a mother's heart. Sometimes that happens. They have that effect on some people. But in many instances, the women become vampires. They devour their own children because of their own trauma. That doesn't make them animals or worthless. It means that they need help. And instead of judging them or casting them aside and saying they're worthless, we need to give them the support and love. But we can only do that if we're honest about calling out their bad behavior. And this is why I appreciated what Kaya said about Sexy Red. Even though what she said was very, very harsh, she didn't lie about anything that Sexy was promoting. So Kaya just basically wrote down the list, everything that Sexy had said that she was willing to do for a man. And calling out bad behavior has to happen more often. We have let these rappers and these celebrities get away with bad behavior for too long. Holding someone accountable for their bad behavior is an act of love. It is not them hating on you. It is not them being jealous of you. It is them saying, listen, I'm noticing something's wrong here. Let me help you resolve this issue. But a lot of young people don't want to hear that. They get triggered when they're being corrected because most of them were not raised in a household where their parents respected them. Their parents didn't respect their humanity. They didn't respect their intellect. They didn't respect anything about them. They were just there to be slaves. You do what I say and that's it. So when the kids get older, they don't respect their parents like that. So when they receive constructive criticism from men like Bill Cosby or women like Monique, regardless of whether you like them or not, stop focusing on the messenger and focus on the message. When we receive constructive criticism, we see that as an attack, as opposed to a corrective measure that we need that will benefit us. Number 15. What I loved about this interview. Nia Long said she felt uplifted and supported by other Black women. At some point in the conversation, Nia and Jeezy talked about her ex, Ime. And it came out last year, like 2 years ago, last year, that her ex cheated on her with, somebody he was working with, right? He was very bold with it and it had been happening for a while. And she said that she was not embarrassed about what happened because she didn't internalize his shortcomings. It was his fault that he cheated, not hers. She didn't feel any shame or embarrassment whatsoever. And this is somebody who has strong boundaries. She didn't blame herself for what someone else did. And she said the process of moving forward was so much easier because there were a lot of Black women who showed support to her, which surprised her because more than likely, Nia was raised in a culture or at a time when a lot of women were backstabbing each other. They didn't show support. They were jealous. So when Nia received this wave of support and love and affirmation from the Black women in the community on social media, it surprised her and it made her emotional. And she said she was also surprised because she didn't know how much of an impact that she had on our culture. And then Jeezy also graciously gave her flowers without trying to flatter her too much. He said that she meant so much to the culture. And I think her humility was very appealing to him. It made him feel like she was safe to connect with. She was safe to compliment because it wasn't going to go to her head, right? And Nia didn't come off as condescending or messy or judgmental, regardless of her high value and her beauty as a woman and as a celebrity. A lot of beautiful women think that they have to be nasty, man-eating dragons to prove that they are better than other men and women. And that is not the case. So Nia felt like she was being affirmed, supported, loved, uplifted, and nurtured by the women in her community, which is what we need to do more of. Now she doesn't feel so isolated, so worthless, or so whatever she was feeling when she was in that dark space, because we were sending love vibrations to her. All right. Number 16, exploring shared trauma. Both Nia and Jeezy shared the same parental trauma. Jeezy being neglected by his mother and Nia feeling neglected by her father. They used this shared experience to elevate the conversation, not start the woe is me victim Olympics, which many people do to justify hurting each other. Just because somebody hurt you doesn't mean you have the right to do it to other people because you're too afraid or too ignorant to ask for help, professional help even. And then Nia said that she and Jeezy had a lot in common. She's dated drug dealers in the past also, in the 80s. And Jeezy was a drug dealer. Which brings me to the next point that I loved about this interview. The chat room. The chat room and social media responses had me laughing my ass off because people were saying that Jeezy was ready to clap the cheeks, that he was dirty macking when he acted like he didn't know why men cheated. Like he was absolutely flabbergasted at the notion that a man would cheat on a good woman. And I was like, what? So one person said that Jeezy proves that a lot of black men lie to pretty women for no reason. Because, you know, here Jeezy was presenting himself as the perfect gentleman, but he had several baby mamas, a wife that he divorced 2 years after marrying her, and a music catalog that celebrated gutter cultural antics. But all of a sudden, he's fascinated by the idea that black men, many black men, not all black men, that many black men, especially high value ones, want to be worshipped like kings, right? Or treated like kings. And if they're not treated this way, they justify cheating. Because of that, we saw this with Martell and Melody. Martell wanted to be submitted to. He wanted to be satisfied incessantly, right? He wanted his wife to bend to his will and put him on a pedestal and treat him like a king. And because she didn't do that, because she had 4 kids and 2 businesses, he ended up cheating on her and felt justified in doing that. Okay? Point number 18, chemistry. Jeezy had a twinkle in his eye throughout this interview. And I'm familiar with this twinkle because I usually see this twinkle when I speak to men in a very endearing way. When men approach women or anybody, they have this hardened exterior. They're very defensive. Some of them are anxious, right? And when you speak to them as if you're genuinely concerned about them because you care about them as human beings, not as sex objects, not as ATM machines, not as ways to validate yourself to other women in society, but you see them as a human being, they let their guard down and they look at you the way that Jeezy looked at Nia. There's a twinkle in his eye, this sort of a quiet acceptance and appreciation of the value of this woman in front of them. She sees me for who I am. She values me not for what I have and what I represent, but me as a human being. I like that twinkle. And somebody in the chat room, back to the chat room again, said that Jeezy had a crush on Nia. I didn't know that. But he looked at her as like he admired her, like he respected her, and he thoroughly enjoyed her company. Not for sexual reasons per se, but because of who and what she represented as a cultural icon. Now, Jeezy could just be another clout chaser like 50 Cent was for Vivica Fox, but they had obvious chemistry, which I do not think should be seen for more than what it was, 2 adults having a mature, respectful, and intimate conversation. That's it, okay? Does it mean he want to clap the cheeks? Does it mean that, you know, Nia's open for him now? Like, the comments were hilarious in the chat room and on social media. People are so cynical and like sardonic. It's just hilarious to me. Okay, anyway. Number 19 about what I appreciated. Nia's beauty and receiving her flowers. Nia looked amazing, and so did Jeezy. I never thought he was attractive, but in this interview, he looked really good. She's always been a unique beauty. And the only thing that was off was her eyebrow makeup. I don't know who did her eyebrow makeup, but they messed up with that. But other than that, she looked amazing. And her smile is so bright and genuine. It lights up the room. Jeezy gave her flowers. And to be honest, she did an excellent job with the interview. She did a great job, asked great questions. And you could tell that she's a naturally inquisitive and intelligent person who likes to ask questions. She wasn't giving a bunch of oohs and ahs and ohs, and that's so deep. She was responding with words, sentences, and follow-up questions that demonstrated not just her knowledge of the topic at hand, but her genuine interest in learning more about Jeezy as a person and making a genuine connection with him, which made the conversation more enriching for everybody. And number 20, the lighting. The set looked great. The lighting was natural, it was intimate, and it accentuated both Nia and Jeezy's attractiveness. This is a Mars-Venus chemistry that they have going on. I've dated a couple Libras, and it is what it is. So the lighting set the tone for a genuine, intimate, honest conversation. She's really, and then back to Nia again, she did an excellent job with this. Like, I don't know if she wants to do this as a podcast going forward, if she has a podcast, but she did a great job. Okay. They both look good. So shout out to whoever was responsible for the lighting. So my takeaway from this conversation is that I am happy that I have not gotten married yet or at my age, because at this point in my life, if I had been married, it would be very, very difficult for me to do the work that I'm doing as an astrologer to help the collective. Being an astrologer requires a lot of intense study and privacy and isolation and self-sacrifice. And you don't want to be interrupted by the demands of a relationship when you're in that space. And so when Jeezy talked about living in his purpose and his marriage to Jenny, I understood what he was talking about. There's a certain type of energy you have to have around you when you are focused on your goals. You cannot have distractions and unnecessary drama around you while you're trying to heal and also trying to elevate at the same time. You're trying to heal, you're trying to elevate, and you're trying to reduce. You need to be in complete and total alignment and focus with the energy of your objective. In my previous relationships, I've had issues with my exes because they did not like the fact that I loved being by myself. And when I'm by myself, I can reflect on my thoughts. I can reflect on my feelings and my experiences and my trauma. I can learn things. I can read. I can do things in private. You can do that in a relationship too, but it's harder when you're dealing with men who are not evolved per se to do evolved work. And so, my takeaway from this for me is that I'm so grateful that I did not get married or am not married, because if I were married, I would not be able to do what I was put here to do. And so that's something that a lot of people should consider when they're asking, why haven't I gotten married yet? Because guess what? More than likely, the person you were going to marry or wanted to marry would not be in alignment with your soul's growth, right? The relationship would just be a bunch of bantering and arguing and sex and going to the movies and eating Popeyes. But then it would just devolve into nothingness and boredom. And then you get a divorce after that. So a lot of us have to be grateful for not being married. I'm not saying marriage is a bad thing. But for me, I know personally, I need to be in a certain type of space in order for me to do what God put me here to do. And a lot of marriages are not conducive for that. A lot of men don't understand what that process is like. They get insecure because you don't need them. You're fulfilled by your work and not them. You're validated by what you do and your impact on other people, not by them, right? Not by their sex or their attention. And so they have an issue with that sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. Women do too. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. If you want to order a personal astrology or tarot reading, you can go to my website. The link is in the description box. I look forward to reading your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe. And again, kudos to Nia and Jeezy for this wonderful interview. I'll speak to you soon.